welcome to the only event at ASU+GSV this year on the subject of apprenticeship, specifically, yeah. I was talking to Deborah and I said, we really need a whole track on apprenticeship. And she said, well, let me think about it. They came back and they said, we can do one panel. So we're combining everything here. On this panel, we have practitioners, people representing organizations that set up and run apprenticeship programs. We have the visionary behind the first technology platform for delivering apprenticeship programs. We have one of the policy leaders on apprenticeship in the country, and we have the leading skill-based instructional design firm who will be doing a lot of work in the apprenticeship and work-based learning space. So before I have them introduce themselves, let me just say a few words about, just to level set on where we are as a country on apprenticeship. And I think some of you realize that there are books in the back that you could take, so that's terrific. I'm Ryan Craig. I am Managing Director at Achieve Partners. We're an investment firm at the intersection of education and employment. And I'm also a co-founder of Apprenticeships for America, which is a nonprofit organization of intermediaries that actually run and run apprenticeship programs, including some of these folks on the panel here in front of you. But just to level set, as a nation, apprentices represent 0.3% of the workforce in America, and that's about 1/10 to 1/20th of what our competitors have in terms of apprenticeship. In terms of spending on apprenticeship, we spend less than 1/50th or 1/100th of what other countries spend on apprenticeship or earn and learn pathways. So I like to say that we have robustly invested in a tuition-based career launch infrastructure in this country. We have dramatically underinvested in a earn and learn career launch infrastructure, which is what apprenticeships are. And of course, apprenticeships are not just training programs, they're jobs. They're jobs first and foremost. If you're not hired and being paid a wage from day one, you're not an apprentice. I don't know, you might be in some kind of other training program, but you're not an apprentice. So these are jobs that have built-in training as part of the program. So we're behind as a country, and the hope of this panel is that we can shed some light on where we are and what we can do to fix that. So I'm just going to have Ximena, as a serial entrepreneur here. Why don't you start with your introduction?
Thanks for pronouncing my name correctly. Thank you. Yeah, I go by Ximena at times as well. My name is Ximena Yates, and I am the co-founder of BuildWithin. BuildWithin is a software company for registered apprenticeships and on-the-job training. Our company it has right now some of the leading apprenticeship programs in it, intermediaries and companies, but the idea really was incubated in our prior company called Phone to Action, which in 2013, it was also a technology company I co-founded. We created an on-the-job training program based really to answer the shortage that we had as a company. So we learned the pain points, and we kind of built a technology that addresses those pain points for apprentices, mentors, managers, and administrators. So our company, as we say, is built for apprentices by apprentices. Thank you.
Hello, folks. My name is Adele Burns, and I am the Deputy Chief at California's Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And in the state of California, we have about 90,000 active apprentices right now, and about 70,000 of those are in the building and fire trades, and 20,000 of those are in all the other industries. And my role is really to focus on the strategy and policy to at least flip that ratio, if not, even greater percentage of apprenticeships across a whole lot of different sectors. And the state of California has really been investing significantly into that with the leadership of our current governor, Gavin Newsom, who put forth a really ambitious goal of serving 500,000 apprentices by 2029, and we're about 168,000 apprentices along that journey. So there's been some really major investments that I know we'll talk about later today, but just this year alone, we're investing over $230 million into apprenticeship-specific funding in California. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, if we got to 500,000 in California, that would mean we'd be 4 or 5 million as a country, which would put us right in line with where we need to be. So that is a perfect goal. Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Vince Verga. I'm a co-founder and chairman of Skillstorm. We're working to close the skills gap in the tech industry. Generically speaking, we're in the hire, train, deploy space. We sort of have gone to market a little bit differently. We call it design, build, deploy. So we build cohesive US-based tech teams at scale for large enterprise clients. On the demand side, that means we work with like the big 4 consulting firms, several of the largest government contracting companies. And on the supply side, we're working with a lot of first-generation college graduates that are either underemployed or, not in tech at all, and a lot of military veterans. About 40% of the people that we hire come out of the military. And when they come into our program, we are training them in AI, cloud, full-stack development, and cyber. And they end up working for some of the best firms in the country. So yeah, really, really excited about what we're doing, and looking forward to the conversation. Thanks, Ryan.
That's great. Matt, you're a newcomer to the world of apprenticeship. Why don't you tell us your story a little bit?
I am. So newer in this. Certainly don't have the experience yet of some of these others on the panel, but I would say that it's been a passion of mine for many years. I grew up in a small town where Champion and Archway Cookie left, and it left tremendous, impact to our local town, a town of less than 5,000 people, because so many jobs were pushed off overseas. And what I've seen in my space, I'm a founder and CEO of a company called RiseNow, and we focus in supply chain and also our tech-enabled services. And supply chain has obviously become a very popular topic since COVID and 2020. And there's been a tremendous gap as far as technology-enabled services to enable those supply chains. And what we have seen is a lot of organizations have really struggled and have pushed a lot of those jobs to either now AI or have pushed a lot of those jobs to offshore. And we're seeing a lot of organizations now really start to regret that and starting to bring those jobs back. A lot of our clients began in some of those tech-enabled, supporting some of these supply chain systems. They got to learn the operation. They got to learn how the organization functioned, how the organization worked. And that's not happening now. So the average inside of supply chain, tech-enabled services, you need 3 to 5 years of experience just to get started. Well, how do you get 3 to 5 years of experience if you unless you are AI or unless you are working in India and then moving to the United States. So we have a tremendous gap, and 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day right now. So there's a huge issue that we see. We work with billion-dollar organizations and larger. 2 of our local clients, love to compare some notes, but Cal State and Kaiser are 2 of our biggest clients. And I will say that they also struggle with college-based recruiting in the area of supply chain. So it's right here in your back door.
That's great. That's great. And Laurie, you come at this from the sort of instructional design side.
That's right. Thank you. I can't tell if this is... Can you guys hear me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, I'll have to use my teacher voice. That's a little rusty at this point. So I am the founder and president of Ease Learning. And 21 years ago, founded the company to help assist universities and colleges to put programs online. Spent a lot of time thinking about, and still do, what the right type of learning experience is for what the learners need, what the market needs, and that has evolved over 21 years. Everyone has noticed college enrollments are declining. Employers are screaming from the rooftops that they don't have qualified job-ready graduates. And having observed all of the different trends over time, we knew that we needed to respond with what kind of learning experience really prepares people not only academically for what they need to know, but what do they need to be able to do. So we spend a lot of time now talking to employers and actually thinking about skills taxonomies and thinking about job roles and trying to work with our academic partners to understand the different ways to use the modality of online learning and reinvent some of the curriculum in a way that it can serve the needs of the learners who really have a goal of graduating with useful readiness capabilities. Sometimes that's through non-credit, sometimes that's leading into degree programs. And a lot of schools are not equipped to think. I mean, they really haven't changed the way that they've done things for 300, 400 years, really. I mean, we're still evolving. And meeting these needs, and with digitalization and how rapidly curriculum is changing and how fast skills evolve, jobs are emerging that didn't exist a couple of years ago. And this trend is only accelerating, and now with AI, it's going to go even faster. How do you evolve curriculum that quickly? I think there's certainly going to be a role for AI in that process, but some of these human skills, thinking about how adults learn, crafting experiences that actually foster that development, and then thinking about how that leads to active learning and apprenticeship and getting experience so that you can get into a job. You can't say that an entry-level job these days is really entry-level. There are certain things you have to come out knowing and doing. So we build those kinds of learning experiences to help facilitate that.
That's great. That's great. Maybe just start with a quick lightning round of, make your 15-second elevator pitch for why apprenticeship now. Who wants to start? Ximena, you're practiced in this. You've been in.
That's why I have co-founders, so they have to go and fundraise and do elevator pitches. But why apprenticeships now and not 100 years ago? So apprenticeships have existed for a long time, but why now? We have 15% of the CHIPS Act infrastructure bill require apprenticeships, so it's a mandate. It's not a choice. And if we do it now, I think our risk to fall behind in the world in terms of innovation is pretty dramatic. We have apprenticeships all over Europe. We have already a crisis of shortage in the US. We have chips that we are producing mostly in Taiwan. And we just had an earthquake in Taiwan, and half of us was really scared about that. What are we gonna do? It's worse than the pandemic. So I think it is an absolute must to do apprenticeships, the fastest accelerator to a job, to a great employee for a long term. And I just don't think it's a choice anymore. The train left the station a long time ago.
So workforce, economic competitiveness, and national security. Adele, you made a pretty good pitch to Governor Newsom, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, some of the core stats that I think about, at least like in California, graduates from high school, about a third go on to a 4-year degree, a third go on to a 2-year degree, and a third go on to no further education.
They become social media influencers.
Yet 80% of jobs today, yet 80% of jobs today require a bachelor's degree, and thus a crisis is created. And there has to be new mechanisms and new middle ground that we find as a whole system, right? As a set of employers thinking differently about how do you partner to develop that talent more quickly, more efficiently to be working in your company, and also how does our education system get better connected to the needs of employers so that when somebody graduates from high school or graduates from community college or graduates from a 4-year degree, they're actually prepared for employment. And I really see apprenticeship as a key mechanism to achieve a lot of, to solve a lot of those problems. And it also, if we can prepare talent more efficiently, really utilize the incredible population of the United States or of any country to really mobilize into the workforce effectively, it leads to a thriving economy. It leads to all of those important outcomes that we want for everybody. And so I just see that apprenticeship is just this incredibly important kind of missing piece in our education and workforce system. And I just think it's an imperative that we invest into it, that we develop it, but it is absolutely movement building. This is not just about policymakers. This is not just about educators. This is not just about employers. Like, this is all of us coming together to adjust, to invest, to think about talent differently. And so I'm excited about this moment, and all those stats about the number of baby boomers retiring. Like, we are in a critical talent moment as a country, and I just think that apprenticeships is a core mechanism to address that.
And we know it's possible because other countries have done it. Yes. Vince, you pitch employers every day probably on the virtues of apprenticeship and your model. Give us the pitch.
Our pitch?
Well, pitch. Not this.
Well, so it's interesting because, you know, when we first approach a lot of these clients, they're not used to buying like this, right? So they're used to getting somebody in that's, you know, got a resume, that's got the experience, and we're telling them we're going to build this person, and we're going to build these teams that don't exist. So this is, you know, net new talent in the market, and they're somewhat incredulous. A lot of it depends on where you approach them in the organization, because it doesn't neatly fit with a lot of these big organizations, because when you're talking about training, they sometimes want to push you to HR or L&D. You know, when you're talking about entry-level hiring, again, you're kind of going to HR. So we found if we can get high enough in the organization, you know, and our value drivers really speak to their value drivers, right? Because they understand, you know, this is a persistent problem that's not going away. And when you're, you know, at the C-level in the organization, they can see across the organization, and they know the way that they've been doing things aren't working. Another thing is, you know, they want to kind of put you in the staffing bucket, and, you know, we're not that either, right? So getting to the right level in the organization, really understanding what they're trying to accomplish, working with them to forecast their needs down the road, and then that way we can be effective at, you know, really building these teams at scale. And these are purpose-built teams that are built directly to their specifications. You know, one of the things I was going to say to your earliest question about, you know, why apprenticeships, yes, it's definitely a national security issue. We do a lot of government contracting. You know, there are tens or hundreds of thousands of open needs right now in cloud and cyber. Like, that's a national security issue. And and what we're doing now is not working. I think we only graduate like 70,000 a year, computer science or related. Most of them are underemployed or not in tech at all. So where are they going to come from? And that way is a very low ROI way of creating these people. We know that. And then secondly, I would say, you know, opportunity costs. You know, I've been in tech services for almost 30 years now. I've seen millions and millions of jobs been sent, you know, offshore. How many more of those jobs could have been here if we had a better way of doing this? How many more innovations would have happened here? How many more people would have started tech companies here? And then the third thing I would say is, it's just a better outcome. It's a better product. You know, we get our hands on somebody, and over 4 months, we can take them from, you know, they have some technical acumen, but when they're done with us, they come out, they hit the ground running, they're productive from day one, and in many cases, billable for some of the biggest and most important consulting firms in the world, right, after only 4 months. So it's a much better, much higher ROI way of producing the talent.
Matt, you're on the precipice of launching the first apprenticeship program in supply chain and procurement. You've had to pitch your co-founders and management team. How'd you convince them?
45% of college grads in the last 10 years are underemployed or unemployed, right? I mentioned that 10,000 baby boomers are retiring on a everyday basis. So there is a tremendous transfer of knowledge that needs to happen. Many of us are in this room because we truly care about making an impact. And this is the first generation that's going to enter this workforce, and the odds are that they will not have what their parents had. We're going backwards, right? And we talked about the national security. We talk about, you know, we made the mistake, I think, of pushing too many jobs in manufacturing overseas and then not thinking about the consequences. The last 15 years, we've been doing it in tech. And now with AI, and now with, you know, let's just front page, well, let me say my mother-in-law has been scammed out of $70,000. by folks from other nations that have her information somehow. How did they have her information? And now with AI, it's going to be even easier to get access to this, you know, to these generations. So what I look at is, I think we took the easy way out as a nation. I think we just said faster, cheaper, India is just better, and let's just throw as many possible jobs as we can, because the focus was on a quarter by quarter basis, profit, 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 not thinking about what's in the best interest of our nation going forward. And I think what needs to occur is that more folks need to look and say, you know, I think a lot of folks look at this next generation that's coming out and they say, you know, they don't want help. I can tell you they're screaming out for help. They want someone to pour into them and teach them what we know. And the hard part is finding those that have the desire, have the commitment, are coachable, and have that, you know, have that appetite to really become. And when someone does, they're lower cost, and I'm seeing loyal to who made that investment in them, which goes totally against the narrative that you see in a lot of corporations that, well, if we invest in them, they're only going to, you know, change jobs every 9 months. When you do it this way versus traditional internships and traditional where there's not truly that investment. I mean, apprenticeship is truly an investment in an individual, right? And it's changing this generation one individual at a time, right? And you can, like, how do you change your community? How do you change the world? You know, you begin in your own home, you begin in your own community, and then you just start seeing that sprout out. And I think more and more, I think businesses are seeing that we have such a wealth inside of our own nation, and what can we do to create low-cost type capabilities, and then, you know, promote this next generation.
After you launch your apprenticeship program, you're going to run for office. I'll manage your campaign. That was good. And Vince, I wonder if just before we get to Laurie, you know, we've seen that's true. That if you invest in an apprentice and you talk to them about this is a pathway, this is a multi-year pathway, you're rewarded in terms of retention. And we've seen once the apprentices transition over to clients, they get much better retention with those apprentices than they do with traditional direct hires.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, we just talked to one of our stormers on our podcast the other day, which you've been on, thank you. But Opportunity Accelerators, by the way, if you want to listen to it. And, you know, she's been with us for about 2 years now. She's on her second assignment. She had no technical background whatsoever. She was coming out of the military. Her first assignment was with Deloitte. And she talked about how she was so nervous going into this environment, but she had other stormers there to draw upon from their knowledge because she had, trained with them for 4 months. Now she's working on an assignment with Appian. She just got promoted to a team leader, and she's over the moon about it. She's referred a handful of people to us that are now going through training, and there's a lot of loyalty there. Plus, we really try to work hard to build a community with these people, and one of the things that we do for them is all of our training that we deliver to our stormers, we also have that online, and they have access to that for forever. So if they graduate from one of our programs, they can come back and upskill and reskill as often as they like.
That's great.
And very quick, Craig, so I want to sort of reinforce that BuildWithin, actually, the reason why we built this company is because in our prior company, 30% of our workforce was apprentices. All our entire customer success team for software were all apprentices. And what we realized is that career changers, retirees, veterans, people without degrees, anybody really, at some point, they're all apprentices. I mean, we were apprentices in our first job. Every promotion, we're an apprentice. Our first kid, you treat them very well. The second kid, you're like, you kind of learn. So apprenticeships, are pretty innate and organic to us as human beings to do. And the only thing that we actually say, you ask me for an elevator pitch and I'm a very obedient, person. I say 15 seconds,
yeah.
I'm gonna use my other 15 seconds. But on the elevator, what we tell employers and everyone is that it's a job. An apprentice is a worker. It's a full-time employee. You get to try for about a year. You get to pay them less. And they're on probation the entire time, trying to skill up. And Elisa Salas here with the Skill Up is part of this ecosystem of building this. But it really is a 1 year. Then they get to try, and the apprentice get to try them. And the retention is huge. Some of our apprentices are co-founders of the company. They started when they were 16 years old, a decade ago. So the retention is huge. It's 95% of them. And like right now, in our clients is the state of Maryland. I don't know if you heard Westmore, Governor Westmore service a year program. They have 250 apprentices in year 1. Year 2, 500, year 3, 1,000, then 2,000 and 2,000. It's amazing. And so I think that the easiest way to tell an employer is that you have a vacancy that can be an apprentice. Give people a chance and give your company a chance to strengthen the muscle of developing someone from within.
That's great. Laurie, the training component of apprenticeship, I'm sure everyone knows there are 2 elements to it. There's the on-the-job training, which is somewhat informal in most cases, and then there's the formal related technical instruction, classroom instruction that's delivered. So obviously, most of what happens in RTI across all these apprenticeship programs is very skill-based. So maybe you can make the pitch for skill-based learning.
Ryan, I think about skills in 2 buckets, really. I mean, there's hard skills, but then there's also soft skills, and really they should be intertwined in the experience. It's very important that we're fostering critical thinking, problem solving, the ability to apply knowledge, and those hard skills need practice. And this is where apprenticeship is so vital. Until you're translating something into a contextual situation, that's really where things start to manifest and you become capable, you become competent.
Right.
So, intertwining training, we really need to redefine lifelong learning. Skills are not going to stop. We're talking about entry level. We're talking about bringing people into the workforce. But once they're there, they need to evolve. They need to grow. There is such a chasm between higher education and workforce still. I work with faculty all the time, and they predominantly say, it's not my job to make sure someone gets a job. And I'm appalled every time I hear that. It absolutely is. There is some value in intrinsically learning and getting a degree, no question. I have a master's degree. I feel very strongly that it was a very important thing. But the ability to thrive, have a standard of living, be able to contribute, and be able to stay relevant, that's getting harder and harder. So I almost challenge us to think not so linearly about apprenticeship, but to start thinking about how are we going to do that in the second go, the third go. People are going to change career paths dozens of times in their lifetime. It is important for employers to start thinking about how do we bring people in, but also how do we retain them. Talent pipeline needs to be an evolution. So that connection between education, formal education, boot camp, whatever it is, and employability, more than anything else, we've been inorganically trying to kind of get folks to talk to each other, to figure out how do you build this kind of training and how do you have the continuity and the availability of it throughout a life cycle. It's not there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. The default is going to have to be work-integrated learning. We're going to need to integrate work with the educational pathways that lead you to your good first job. Apprenticeship, though, of course, is the gold standard because it's not just a pathway, it's a job where you're being paid from day one, so therefore it's the most equitable pathway. You don't need to be able to afford the tuition. You don't need to be willing to take on debt for the program. It's a job that pays a living wage by definition. Let me turn to Adele. We have just a few minutes on policy. So clearly, as I mentioned at the outset, we don't spend nearly enough on apprenticeship. As I make the argument in the book, we don't spend it the right way. But under your leadership, California became the first jurisdiction in the country to provide formula-based or pay-per-apprentice funding. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the revolutionary apprenticeship innovation funding that California launched, how it's going, and all the other states that are telling you they're going to follow in your wake.
Amazing. So what we launched in 2022 is the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding. And so far, the overall plan is for there to be $135 million over 4 years into this pilot of formula funding. And I'll be honest, even within government, I can't tell you how many times I have to say, no, this isn't a grant. We're not entering into a contract. If a program serviced a certain number of apprentices, we are going to reimburse their costs for up to this formula amount. So the amount that we have offered is to program sponsors, so those are the organizations that are running the apprenticeship program. They get $3,500 per apprentice per year, and that's actually prorated to the month, right? So if your apprentice is active from June to December, you get half that amount, right? So it's totally formula-based. It's a reimbursement model, and so we have an annual application window, and the application is not some long proposal about what you're going to do with the money. It's give us your report that's generated from our system that says how many apprentices you had, give us your demonstration of expenses, and tell us where to send the check, and that's it. Like, that's the whole thing. And it's performance-based funding, and it's very exciting. We are growing apprenticeships. Like, this funding specifically is an investment into the expansion of apprenticeships into all of the sectors outside of the building and fire trades where it's already a well-utilized mechanism. And we have grown. When we set out to make this investment, when I was pitching this back in 22, or 21 and 22, I was saying, look, if we make this investment, we could grow by like maybe 10% annually for the coming years. We grew by 18%, and then we grew by 15%. So we're outperforming all of our own projections as to how much we would be able to grow apprenticeship. And I just think it just makes sense to me. I would love to claim that this was some brilliant idea of mine. It's not. It's what a lot of other countries are doing. It's what they're doing in the UK. It's what they do in Germany. It's what they're doing in Switzerland, in France. I mean, this is a well-trodden path. And government so often does grants because they're comfortable doing grants. But grants are a lot of promising what you may do, being judged on how good you are at writing a proposal, not how good you are at delivering. And then a whole long contracting process and reporting, and it's a lot of overhead for everybody involved. And so it's really exciting to have this apprenticeship innovation funding being piloted here in California. So the application window is open right now, so if you are a program that's already registered here in California, I hope you've already gotten our barrage of emails reminding you to please apply for this funding, because that's all it is. You apply, you're eligible, we send you a check, done. Keep doing the good work. Keep running your apprenticeship program, keep serving more apprentices, more employers. The other part of it is the training funding side of it. So actually, this idea of formula funding has existed in some ways on the training cost side of things here in California. So since the late 80s, we have funded what's nationally called related technical instruction. We in California call it related and supplemental instruction, but it's formula funding for covering the classroom training portion of an apprenticeship. And so we have had that in place for a while. It's been the backbone of what has led to the 70,000 apprentices that we do have on the building trades side. And we have therefore sort of mirrored that for the expansion of apprenticeship into a lot of different sectors. So the AIF funding also has a training portion to cover the cost of the classroom. So essentially, when you think about the ROI, and I know that there's a ROI study that's been done and cited by many of us here, I'm sure, of the for every $1 invested into creating an apprenticeship program, I think it's there you go, look at that, $1.45. See, I knew we had all quoted this. That, I like to note, was done in Michigan. where there is not $230 million annually being invested into covering the cost of an apprenticeship program. It's really on the employers. Here in California, we cover the cost of classroom training. With AIF, we cover the cost of running the program, and what we're really asking for employers is to just come to the table and cover the cost of wages, which you would do otherwise, right? Like, you need to fill these vacancies.
It's a lower wage.
Right, exactly. It's recognizing that you're hiring a green person, so you might not pay them the wage that you would pay for somebody who is already qualified for the job. But so this is an
So
experiment
you
we're doing
combine
in
a
California.
high intervention intermediary like a Skillstorm or a RiseNow or a BuildWithin with that funding. You make the proposition irresistible to employers to say yes to
The idea.
apprenticeship and yes to hiring apprentices. And you're modest, you didn't mention it, but thanks in part to your experiment, in the minibus that passed a month ago, Congress instructed the Department of Labor to look at transitioning from grant-based funding to formula-based funding in 25. So thank you.
And very quick, like apprenticeships, apprentices is, I mean, we all been an apprentice sometime, right? Like, there's really not so much to it besides actually giving a person a chance to try. And sometimes employers get really scared of getting a software developer in the code, so they put them in these separate groups, and they don't actually realize that today applications, Jira, etc., they already have protections where you can have a reviewer process, etc. So what we see in our users is that they don't really have any supplement activities for the most part. Some of them, that is a requirement for related technical instruction that in our platforms occurs in an asynchronous way, and this is after they have that 40 hours of work. But really is when people learn best is when they're actually doing. Right, like you can wash, master, chop, and what is it?
There's skills
and then
that
read the
employers can't
recipe.
find that you can't learn well in a classroom. You have to actually.
Yeah, you have to do it. So your best cake is now gonna be the one that you read the recipe for. But for the employers, it's really hard to make the connection between an apprenticeship and a real worker, because they remember the last intern and they confuse apprentice with intern. So I think a little bit of a rebrand is necessary. And really, kind of explain apprenticeships are jobs that really don't require a lot more than giving a person a chance for a year.
That's great. Well, we have time for just some final words. So we'll come back to Adele at the end. But Vince, final thoughts on apprenticeship. If you wanted the audience to leave with one thing on apprenticeships, what would that be?
Yeah, look, I just go back to it's a better mousetrap, right? It's obviously better for the learner. I think ultimately it's better for the employer. You have the ability, a lot of people can't take the risk to stop what they're doing, go without income, and to learn some of the most important skills that are in demand in the market. So this opens up the aperture, it attracts a more diverse crowd, and that's part of the reason why it's a better product, because you are paying these people to learn, you're able to hold them accountable, and so yeah, I mean, and very grateful for the work that you're doing, and hopefully we can get some more momentum at the national level to really get this continue moving in the right
Pay them. You're going to have more people learning more faster because they're being paid. Matt.
The demand is there. So for every one of these opening positions for these types of apprentice programs, you're seeing 100 to 125 applicants. So the demand is there. I think what we need to do is we need to prepare more folks for this type, and I think we need to look at how we can re-engineer, and I'm seeing some universities that are looking at different models on what they can do to accelerate. We do it on the trade side, right? There's, as far as building out that apprentice model, that's very established and we've had it for a long time. But on the tech-enabled services, we've talked about it, but I'm going to reiterate it. We have no idea what tech-enabled services is going to look like in 10 years. And we're experts in this field. AI is disruptive, and we have no idea. And we're in the space, and we're doing it day in and day out. So how can an educational system be prepared to enable workers for 10 years from now? So, and I'll share a story. It's I teach at a university, and it's just, I Zoom in once a week. It's not, but it's just, again, kind of giving back to this next generation. And one of the things that the guy that I co-teach with, one of the things that he shared is he wrote an article on AI, and when he got into his space, which was media, it was either buy a house or buy a camera. It was $150,000 to buy a camera or $150,000 to buy a house. And it was very difficult to get in to the media industry. So he bought the camera, started his business, and then the rest is history, and became an entrepreneur. We have opportunity now for so many people to get into tech at such a low cost, low barrier of entry, and I believe the number of jobs that are going to be created because of that is going to be exponential. But everybody's kind of looking at the job loss. There is tremendous job creation, but we have to look at what kind of workforce do we need to create that can prepare for what's going to be 5-10 years from now.
It's terrific. Laurie?
Yeah, so, having the opportunity for apprenticeship is key, but that will always be accompanied with how are we transferring knowledge, how are we creating learning experiences that help facilitate moving someone from what they need to know to what they need to do, and then giving them opportunities for practice. There are, in every case, whether it's higher education, corporate training, or even in an apprenticeship training to get apprentices up and running, you've got this newbie on the job. Now what? Who's taking the time to mentor? How is that structured? What does that training look like? Thinking about how are you going to iterate and continually keep up with the new skill, the new thing, the new set of competencies that somebody needs to have to be effective at their job. We have to get faster at this, and AI is actually playing a role in this as well. But it's never going to do the human aspect of how do people need to learn and relate to one another and actually apply things. That has to be built into our systems. We've taken up online learning, and we've redefined how, you just said I Zoom in. That's great, but what else can we be doing, and what other technologies are there to help facilitate and somebody's competence, learning, tracking? How do we think about the data around what they know? And there's a whole opportunity there in every single aspect of learning that we all have to start reinventing. Higher education hasn't been reinvented still in hundreds of years, so there's a lot of work to do there. Big opportunity.
Totally. Adele, you get the last word, and you can state it with authority because you represent the great state of California.
I just want to express a lot of gratitude to everybody who's here in the room and choosing to spend their time thinking about apprenticeships. And, as I said at the top, this is absolutely a movement. And so I'm really excited about this movement. I'm really glad you all chose to come and talk to us. And I also just want to share that, we as the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, we're here, I've talked a lot about the funding aspects, but we have a whole team that are here to support all the different stakeholders. As you dip your toe into the waters of apprenticeship, how can we help you out? And I think it's amazing to have these fellow panelists here, because part of our strategy is to develop a whole system of apprenticeship intermediaries so that those entities, like some of the folks up here, can be sort of managing the overall program, and employers can just sign up for apprentices. So I'm excited about all the follow-up conversations from here, and I do want to call out my colleague Nicole Picada. Please raise your hand, who's here in the room. She and I are both here representing DAS and are here to be in support of you as you hopefully got some inspiration from this conversation and thinking about the next steps. So just a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Ryan, for gathering all of us.
Thank you. This is, we desperately need to build the apprenticeship earn and learn infrastructure that other countries have built that we haven't built. These are the pioneers right here. When we have as many apprentice jobs as we have places in freshman classes across the country, we'll be able to say, I remember when I saw these guys on stage. So thank you all. That was great.